farming is. So that is what this beautiful city is named for. This was due to the river's fairly rancid odor back then, but despite its humble beginnings, cruising along the river has become a mainstay among visitors and natives. And it's from the Chicago River that you are going to get the most awe-inspiring vantage point toward some world-class architecture. Chicago is the city where the skyscraper was born, invented, all started right here with the Chicago School style. Louis Sullivan and William LeBaron Jenney innovated a steel frame infrastructure. This would pave the way to the modern skyscraper that you see all around you. These buildings are not exceptionally tall, and you'll see this once we're out onto the main branch, but they are considered to be skyscrapers. Red brick cladding on the outside, not providing any structural support, therefore aesthetic purposes only. All of that support is coming from the steel skeleton. So you will be seeing 5 prominent architectural styles along the tour this afternoon, and I want to give a brief overview just so you're a little bit more familiar once we do get out there. Chicago School being the first, then you'll see some great examples of the Beaux-Arts, also referred to as Neoclassicism, influenced by ancient Grecian or ancient Roman aesthetics. Daniel Burnham, who was our city planner for a time and chief of the World's Fair of 1893, he loved and perpetuated this particular style of architecture. And that's how he chose to represent Chicago at the fair, a city full of these Beaux-Arts white pavilions. And then in the 1920s, Art Deco becomes very prominent. These designs were starting to become very tall, which was unprecedented. So the architects are really going to be emphasizing that verticality, drawing your eyes toward the top of these deco designs. Heavy ornamentation on many decos here in Chicago, and a lot of them take on a classic shape. They look like giant chairs or thrones. Very specific reason behind that, which I'll talk about a little bit later. After the 1920s, there was a 30-year gap in construction as a result of the Great Depression. No money, no big buildings going up in Chicago. We resumed construction in the late 1950s into the early 1960s, entering into the age of modernism, essentially the antithesis to the preceding Art Deco period. 30 years had gone by and a lot had changed. So modern designs have no ornamentation whatsoever, built on a grid, exposed steel, glass curtain wall, dark in color, visually weightless quality to the design of these modern spaces. Mies van der Rohe, one of the most influential architects of the 20th century, is considered to be the father of modernism, influencing architects from all over the world. So modern designs are also referred to as international style for that reason. The 5th and final style that you'll see today is called postmodernism. Pardon me. We are currently in a postmodern era. Postmodernism pays tribute to the past. Really easy way to remember that. So these designs will caricature or pay homage to a specific building in history, specific style of architecture, or even a specific architect. And then kind of lumped in with postmodernism, contextualism, which is exactly what it sounds like, referring to a building, taking cues from the surrounding space. So either the architectural surroundings or the landscape surrounding the space, and of course, sometimes both. And once we do get out there, you'll see plenty of examples of all 5 of these styles. And with those great visual aids, you'll gain a better understanding of what each style represents here in the city of Chicago. So we'll be moving out of Ogden Slip momentarily. This little private sector of the river was named for our very first mayor, William Butler Ogden. And like I said before, we'll be swinging around to the main branch in just a few minutes, and that's when I'll start describing all of this wonderful architecture. But before we get there, I do need to focus on this river. So this is something that some of you might already know, but back in the year 1900, the natural flow of the Chicago River was reversed. Lake Michigan, which is pretty much straight up ahead of us, was and is our main source of drinking water. Remember, smelly wild onions. This river was not a clean body of water. It was once considered to be toxic. The good news is we've been upgraded at this point to highly polluted, so we are very proud of this here in Chicago. And I don't say this to alarm you guys or scare you. We have very safe, clean drinking water here. The river reversal is how that was achieved. So this toxic river flowing right into Lake Michigan, contaminating our water source. Chicagoans were becoming very ill, big public health concern. Something had to be done. So the sanitation department starts brainstorming, and they settle on this brilliant idea reversing the flow of the river. So they began digging away at this massive canal, putting all this time, energy, effort into this project. Keep in mind, if they are successful in this endeavor, this toxic water will end up somewhere other than Lake Michigan. That somewhere was St. Louis. They caught wind of what we were up to, and as you can imagine, they were not happy about it. So they file an injunction with the city of Chicago, basically saying, we don't want your disgusting water. But before any hearing can actually take place, Chicago just went and did it. Reversed the flow of the river irrevocably. The proverbial floodgates had been opened. They did this overnight. It was very Chicago of us. Sometimes you do what you gotta do, crucial to our city's future, and we weren't going to let all that digging go to waste. So they did it successfully, and now Lake Michigan flows into our river system, bringing us safe, clean drinking water, considered to be one of the 7 engineering wonders of the United States. So if you look over to your right, you will notice, once we're past this partition, it'll be easier to see, but you'll notice that our entire lakefront, free and clear of any high-rise construction. So that's everything east of Lakeshore Drive, which is that roadway we just moved underneath. And we have one man to thank for this, Aaron Montgomery Ward. He is a hero in the city of Chicago, and he single-handedly saved this lakefront for the future generations. He fought for nearly 20 years. This was late 1800s, moving into the early 1900s. Ward fought to preserve this area of the city. Montgomery Ward was a millionaire, but he didn't like the other millionaires in Chicago, would oppose them at every chance. He also didn't want a lot of the poor civilians who were living there at the time to lose their homes to these large construction projects. So he fought really hard, derided in the press, scorned by the politicians for making this so difficult, but he was victorious, and because of him, our entire lakefront has been preserved. It's all beaches, parkland, open to the public, and no obstruction of Lake Michigan. Ward said at the time that he fought for the poor people of Chicago, not the millionaires, which goes to show one person truly can make a great difference in this world. Just beyond the Swiss Hotel behind it, taller structure, curved white balconies wrapping around blue tinted glass, that is Aqua. Also designed by Jeannie Gang, complete back in 2010. Aqua is currently the tallest building anywhere in the world that was designed by a female architect. So we're very proud to have that right here in Chicago. At the base of Aqua is Hotel Blue. Up top, you have some residential space. Some of Chicago's rich and famous are residing there. And Jeannie Gang, who designed both Aqua and Vista, is a native of Chicago, doing incredible things. She's going to break her own record as tallest by a woman once Vista is complete in the year 2020. Over on your right side now, NBC Tower. See that spire sticking out of the rooftop? 1989. This is postmodernism paying tribute to the past. Though it was complete in 1989, it's a postmodern take on the 1920s soaring Art Deco style, modeled after Rockefeller Center in New York City, and designed by Adrian Smith, who, if you're not familiar with it, you definitely will be by the end of this tour. That building off to the right looks like a yellow onion resting on top. That is the Hotel Intercontinental, beautiful Art Deco. That onion figurine lights up every evening. It's always changing, it's generally multicolored, so if you're around tonight, take a look up, check it out. This is Glacier Center on your right side, home to the University of Chicago's Graduate School of Business. As of the 1990s, designed by Dirk Lomahan. Just a little bit up ahead on the right, that short glass structure, that is an Apple store. It is fairly new. The flat structure on the rooftop from an aerial view does look like a giant MacBook, which we obviously can't see from here, but you can look that up later if you're interested. And then right behind the Apple store is Tribune Tower. I'm not skipping this one. Tribune Tower is one of my favorite buildings in the city of Chicago, and I will talk about it in depth on our way back. Coming up on your right side with that clock tower up there, this beautiful space is the Wrigley Building. 1921, designed by the firm of Graham, Anderson, Probst & White. It was the very first office building constructed along the Magnificent Mile. very popular stretch of Chicago along Michigan Avenue, which we're underneath right now. And William Wrigley was a born salesman. He started off selling not gum, but soap powder and baking powder. He would provide complimentary packs of gum with the products he was selling, and he noticed that people were a lot more excited about this free gum than the products they were paying for. So Wrigley saw his destiny right there and went on to make a fortune selling chewing gum. Continuing on the right, you'll notice Trump Tower coming up, complete in 2009. Currently the second tallest building in the city. This is another Adrian Smith design. Smith, formerly of Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, now running his own architectural firm. A great example of postmodern contextualism. Contextualism, a building taking cues from the surrounding space. This is curving with the river, and the various setbacks do align with the buildings surrounding it. Postmodern contextualism here, and then next door on the right, a wonderful example of modernism. The old IBM building was designed by the master himself, Mies van der Rohe. All those great modern qualities, dark in color, built on a grid, exposed steel, glass curtain wall, no ornamentation, visually weightless quality to the design of this modern space. Mies van der Rohe was known for saying, less is more, and that is going to be reflected in all of his designs. This is Van der Rohe's very last building. It was complete in 1971, about a year after his death, so he never... The Mart that resemble giant Pez dispensers. These are the merchant princes of Chicago: Montgomery Ward, Marshall Field, Filene, Sears, Woolworth. They were all very important to Chicago's early economy. So we paid tribute to them right here in front of the Mart. The Merchandise Mart was complete back in 1929, commissioned by the Marshall Field Company. And this kicked off recently, September 29th. This grand facade of the Merchandise Mart that's facing the river is now acting as a giant canvas. It's nearly 3 acres. 34 high-powered projectors will project various works of art onto that facade 5 nights a week. It's the biggest digital art display in the entire world. Totally unprecedented. Definitely try to catch that while you're in town. Over here on your right side, some brand new construction. There are going to be 2 new high-rises constructed on this plot of land, very tall residential towers that will drastically shake up our views from Wolf Point. Wolf Point is where we're at now, where the 3 branches of the river collide, the main branch north and south. And the name Wolf Point goes all the way back to Chicago's frontier days. So try to imagine, it's 1833, and of course, none of these buildings are here yet. But on each bank of the river stood these multi-purpose venues. These would serve as meeting halls, churches, bars, hotels, anything they needed. This was the social hub of the city for years. And do keep in mind that Chicago is a relatively young city. And now we're moving toward the South Branch. Railroad is prior. And now you can all see why that is. It's very narrow at the base, very heavy at the top. It gives you the impression that it could topple over fairly easily in a strong wind. But you have to put your faith in the engineers, the architects, and ironworkers. They know what they're doing. It is structurally sound, not going to tip over, even though that cantilever construction makes it look like a giant top-heavy popsicle. I haven't seen anything quite like this in Chicago. I love this building. I think it's such a great